This video discusses an ongoing issue and includes claims from various parties involved. Viewers are encouraged to watch with an open mind.
President Trump just announced on social media that Venezuelan President, Nicolás Maduro has been captured and flown out of the country.
Hey guys, it's Sean and welcome back. Today we're diving into a conflict that has the entire world on edge, the United States versus Venezuela. On January 3rd, 2026, the world was sent into a frenzy after President Donald Trump shared a photo on Truth Social, the social media platform owned by the Trump Media and Technology Group. The post featured a photo claiming that Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro had been successfully captured by U.S. forces. The photo clearly shows Nicolás Maduro on a plane, handcuffed and blindfolded. Now, what's actually going on here? I'm going to break it all down for you in a simpler format, just like I always do. I can't wait to read your thoughts in the comments afterward, because you never know how deep this hole goes.
Tonight and early today, at my direction, the United States Armed Forces conducted an extraordinary military operation in the capital of Venezuela. Overwhelming American military power, air, land, and sea, was used to launch a spectacular assault, and it was an assault like people have not seen since World War II. It was a force against a heavily fortified military fortress in the heart of Caracas to bring outlaw dictator Nicolás Maduro to justice. This was one of the most stunning, effective, and powerful displays of American military might and competence in American history.
So, to give you some context, the tension between Venezuela and the U.S. isn't new. It's actually been brewing since 1999, back when Hugo Chavez was still the president. Chavez really rubbed the U.S. the wrong way when he openly opposed their policies and military interventions in Afghanistan and Iraq. Relations between the two countries went from bad to worse after Chavez openly accused the U.S. of masterminding the 2002 coup attempt against him. And yeah, there actually was a coup, guys. Chavez was briefly ousted for just 48 hours before reclaiming the presidency. He was adamant that the U.S. was pulling the strings behind the scenes because he was convinced his people truly loved him. And honestly, the numbers backed him up at the time because he went on to win the 2012 presidential election yet again. This marked his fourth time being elected president. It was during this term that he appointed Nicolás Maduro, who was serving as foreign minister at the time, to be his vice president. But right before he could even start his new term, Chavez announced that he had to fly to Cuba for cancer treatment. In the meantime, he gave Maduro the green light to step in and take over the reins as his acting successor. Fast forward about a year later to March 2013, Hugo Chavez passed away. With his death, the country had to head back to the polls for a special presidential election. Nicolás Maduro ended up winning and was officially elected president. But even then, the relationship between Venezuela and the US never actually got any better. If anything, it just kept spiraling. In fact, as bad as the relationship was during Chavez's time, it became even worse once Nicolás Maduro became president. Since then, the United States has leveled numerous allegations against Nicolás Maduro. Then, in 2018, Venezuela was hit by a severe economic crisis. It reached a point of hyperinflation, inflation on a massive scale, with rates soaring to 800%. Why? Because low global oil prices, declining oil production, and general financial mismanagement put a massive strain on the Venezuelan government. From what I've read, they were so focused on their oil industry that other sectors were completely neglected. Eventually, Venezuela ran out of foreign currency reserves, which forced them to print more money, and that's exactly when inflation spiraled. But even so, in 2019, Nicolás Maduro was re-elected as the president of Venezuela for his second term. Now, at that time, Donald Trump was already in his first term as U.S. president. So, it was under the Trump administration that Maduro was re-elected. They claimed that Maduro's government was illegitimate and instead recognized the president of the Venezuelan National Assembly, Juan Guaido, as the interim president, even though this move sparked a lot of international debate. By 2022, Venezuela finally managed to pull itself out of hyperinflation, but the damage from that previous inflation crisis was massive. It was so severe that it forced a huge number of people to flee the country. Since 2015, records show that 7.1 million people have left Venezuela in search of a better life. Just imagine a country being left behind by 7.1 million of its people. The impact is bound to be massive. Venezuela has also been labeled as a country that is, for lack of a better word, quite a mess. In the 2024 presidential election, Nicolás Maduro won yet again. He was sworn in on the 10th of January 2025, and this third term is supposed to run until 2031. However, his third victory has been heavily contested. Several opposition-led countries around Venezuela, including the United States, have called the results into question. In 2024 and 2025, Joe Biden was still the U.S. president. Biden himself stated that they did not recognize Nicolás Maduro's victory. According to him, the real winner was his opponent, Edmundo Gonzalez. It's even been said that Maduro's third victory is considered by some to be one of the largest cases of election fraud in Latin American history. Based on the election results, it was reported that Maduro won 52% of the vote compared to his opponent, Edmundo Gonzalez, who took 43%. However, according to the opposition, who deployed thousands of volunteers to conduct on-the-ground checks, they claim that 80% of the polling stations showed Edmundo Gonzalez winning at least 67% of the vote. But at the end of the day, Maduro was still officially declared the winner. Just a few days after Donald Trump was inaugurated in 2025, he immediately started putting the squeeze on Venezuela. He even rolled out a mass deportation policy, arguing that the massive influx of migrants, including many from Venezuela, was bringing crime and nothing but trouble to the United States. And in that same month, on the 20th of January 2025, right as he took office, Donald Trump signed an executive order classifying certain criminal organizations and drug cartels as foreign terrorist organizations. One of the groups specifically named was a Venezuelan gang called Tren de Aragua. Now, Trump claims that Nicolás Maduro is basically in cahoots with this gang, helping them carry out all sorts of illegal activities. Not only did Trump accuse Maduro of working with criminal groups, but he also claimed that Maduro played a key role in trying to destabilize the U.S., and specifically through the migrant crisis and transnational drug trafficking. Then, in August 2025, the United States began deploying its military forces. They began conducting limited military operations against groups identified as drug cartels in the Caribbean Sea. They started seizing Venezuelan tankers and ramping up their military presence in the waters surrounding the country, deploying 3 amphibious assault ships, roughly 6,000 sailors and Marines, and various aircraft. On top of that, Donald Trump openly called for regime change in Venezuela. And finally, late last November, Donald Trump issued an ultimatum to Nicolás Maduro. He told him to step down, saying that if he surrendered power, he could leave Venezuela safely, unharmed, and in total comfort. Nicolás Maduro refused. He told his supporters in Venezuela that he didn't want what he called a slave's peace. He also openly stated that this pressure is part of a broader U.S. effort to seize control of Venezuela's strategic interests. Maduro also claimed that what they're really after is control over Venezuela's oil reserves. Since he rejected their offer, the U.S. has been doubling down, cranking up the pressure on Venezuela even further. The U.S. military has been ramping up its presence in the Caribbean. They've even started launching strikes against vessels that the U.S. claims are suspected of smuggling drugs into the United States.
Trump confirming tonight the United States has carried out a strike against a drug-carrying vessel from Venezuela. 11 gang members were on that boat in the southern Caribbean, and they were killed in a blast. Now, Trump posted this video to social media with a warning, quote, "Let this serve as notice to anybody even thinking about bringing drugs into the United States of America."
Maduro has repeatedly stated that he has no intention of going to war with the U.S. However, he's holding his ground and refuses to take orders from Washington. He's even gone as far as mocking Donald Trump openly. He even danced in front of a group of students in Venezuela to a song with the lyrics, "No war, yes peace." While dancing, he mocked Trump by mimicking his trademark move, pumping his clenched fists. Meanwhile, U.S. intelligence began quietly gathering intel on Maduro. They had been planning, preparing, and training for months for a mission dubbed Operation Absolute Resolve, a forced entry operation designed to oust Nicolás Maduro from power. It was even reported that U.S. forces had been training with a full-scale replica of Maduro's residence, built specifically to prepare for the operation. And finally, on Friday, the 2nd of January 2026, at 11:46 p.m., Donald Trump officially gave the green light. In the early hours of January 3rd, according to official U.S. government statements, they successfully secured Maduro and his wife, Cilia Flores, from their home. That night, a massive military operation was launched, involving 150 aircraft. They managed to breach the presidential residence in an operation that saw a heavy deployment of military assets. The raid caused major disruptions in Caracas, with several explosions reported throughout the operation.
He didn't make it to that area of the house. They actually built a house which was identical to the one they went into, with all the safes and all the steel.
By 4:29 a.m., Maduro had been secured aboard the aircraft carrier USS Iwo Jima as it departed Caracas, bound for New York. According to senior Venezuelan officials, the operation was a bloody one, leaving at least 80 people dead, including both security forces and civilians. And the death toll is expected to climb, as many others are still in critical condition. Now, if you've been spending any time on social media lately, you've probably seen how much this has completely split the internet. People are deeply divided over this. There's been a massive wave of testimonials from Venezuelans who are either furious or absolutely thrilled about Maduro's arrest. Obviously, both sides have their reasons. You'll see tons of people who are actually celebrating and thanking the US, claiming that so many of the country's deep-rooted problems were caused by Maduro's leadership. Take the hyperinflation we just talked about. Venezuela is a country with immense wealth, yet the people never saw any of it. Then there are the elections, which many believe were rigged, and the findings from the UN's independent international fact-finding mission, which discovered that since 2014, the Bolivarian National Guard has been involved in a pattern of extrajudicial killings, arbitrary detentions, torture, and harassment. These actions specifically targeted anyone critical of the government, including protesters and members of the political opposition. Basically, anyone who stood against Maduro faced widespread persecution. On the flip side, there are those who are dead set against his kidnapping or detention. Critics argue that this U.S. intervention lacks a solid legal basis and is seen as a blatant violation of national sovereignty. Now, obviously, the U.S. can't just go around snatching people up out of the blue for no reason. They have their own side of the story. We've been talking about how the relationship between the U.S. and Venezuela has been anything but smooth. In fact, it's more like a decades-long toxic relationship. But why did Donald Trump finally decide to pull the trigger on ousting Maduro? By January 5th, Maduro was already in New York, where he was hauled into court. There, the U.S. Attorney General laid out a massive 25-page indictment against him. As for the charges against Nicolás Maduro, to put it simply, he was indicted on. Specifically, he was charged with narco-terrorism, conspiracy to import cocaine, possession of machine guns and destructive devices, and conspiracy to possess machine guns and destructive devices, all directed at the United States. In a nutshell, he's being charged as a narco-terrorist criminal on top of several weapons charges. He was accused of weaponizing his power to harm or target the United States, the U.S. Also claims that Maduro abused his presidency to corrupt once legitimate institutions, turning them into a pipeline to smuggle tons of cocaine into America. So, the main focus here is that Maduro is allegedly a high-level drug trafficker. In fact, U.S. Authorities strongly believe he was partnering with the very drug cartels they classify as narco-terrorists. Prosecutors allege that the defendant provided law enforcement protection and logistical support for drug shipments moving through Venezuela. As president, he reportedly knew exactly where those drugs were headed: the United States. Essentially, they're accusing Maduro of giving the green light and backing these cartels to flood American streets with drugs. It's claimed he went far beyond just supporting them. He was practically their facilitator. He allegedly handed out passports to smugglers, provided them with planes, granted them diplomatic immunity, and even helped them smuggle their drug money back into Venezuela. The U.S. also claims that since taking office in 2013, Maduro has allegedly allowed drug trafficking to flourish for his own personal gain, as well as for the benefit of his family and inner circle. Prosecutors have gone even further, accusing his wife, Celia Flores, of being a key part of this conspiracy. He reportedly took hundreds of thousands of dollars in bribes, including kickbacks for securing drug shipments. And it wasn't just the first lady, the first son was involved too. It's alleged that Maduro's son, Nicolás Ernesto Maduro Guerra, who previously served as a member of the Venezuelan parliament, is accused of making frequent trips to Margarita Island off the coast of Venezuela, allegedly using aircraft to transport packages filled with drugs. Now, in that New York courtroom yesterday, Nicolás Maduro pleaded not guilty to all charges. His legal team argued that as a head of state, his forced removal by the U.S. was completely illegal. They went even further, claiming that by bypassing the UN Charter, the United States has committed a flagrant violation of international law. Article 2, Section 4 of the UN Charter clearly states that all members must refrain from the threat or use of force against the territorial integrity or political independence of any state. Sarah Krizoff, a defense attorney and former federal prosecutor, pointed out that it's incredibly difficult to gauge the legal validity of the case against Maduro. The reason? Those indictments we just broke down don't actually disclose the evidence the prosecutors have on the table. Technically speaking, prosecutors aren't required to reveal all their cards just yet. Especially in a massive drug trafficking case like this, most of the evidence is classified. But then again, it's still anyone's guess whether they actually have enough hard evidence to justify the arrest of a sitting president like Nicolás Maduro. So, that's the official line from the US. But experts, political analysts, civilians, and people across the internet all have their own theories about what's really going on. A lot of people are convinced that the US didn't go after Maduro because of those drug charges they've been throwing around. Instead, they believe it's all about self-interest and lining their own pockets. After all, this wouldn't be the first time the US has pulled a move like this. But since we're crossing into conspiracy theory territory now, let's save that for tomorrow on Trace Zero. Thanks for joining the discussion today. So, I'll see you tomorrow. Don't forget to subscribe, because if you're still watching this, maybe you're looking for the same thing I am.